Welcome to FlamesNation Radio, an emergency podcast edition, because we have some news. First of all, podcast brought to you by DoorDash and Eau Claire Distillery, makers of Ripper's Whiskey, the official whiskey of the Calgary Flames. And had an interesting night. So, if you're a Flames follower, if you follow the Flames, cover the Flames, whatever, when Ryan Leslie tweets the eye emoji, uh, you definitely pay attention because Ryan has a good batting average with that. And so early on Thursday evening, he tweeted the eye emoji, and it became apparent that something was up. And the something that was up is a fairly significant contract extension, arguably the most significant contract extension in Flames franchise history. The Flames have officially signed Jonathan Huberdeau to an 8-year contract extension worth $10.5 million per season. The total value of the contract is $84 million. It is the highest value contract the Flames have ever signed a player to. 8 years is the longest deal the Flames have ever signed a player they've kept to. They signed Matthew Tkachuk to an 8-year deal. That many on Twitter noted, hey, the Flames signed that deal, but the Florida Panthers negotiated the Tkachuk deal, and the Flames simply filed at the Central Registry and then hit go on the trade. So it's a Flames, Tkachuk's contract is a Flames contract, but also not really a Flames contract. So $10.5 million is the largest AAV on a contract in Flames history. It dwarfs the $7 million that Jerome McKinley got in a couple different deals, and that Matthew Tkachuk got in his most recent deal. $84 million is larger than both the $76 million on Tkachuk's Florida deal and the 44.625 that Sean Monahan has on his current deal. If you exclude for length Matthew Tkachuk's current deal with Florida, Sean Monahan's 7-year deal, which he signed in 2016, was up to this point the longest deal in Flames history. It's no longer the case. Every single record for contract size and longevity now will be with Jonathan Huberdeau, who has yet to play a single game for the Calgary Flames. The deal begins after this coming season. Huberdeau is slated to be an unrestricted free agent following the 22-23 season. He becomes a unrestricted free agent now in the offseason of 2031. The extension begins in July 2023, and the contract runs till the end of the 30-31 season. So yeah, it's you're making a big commitment to a player who has yet to officially, pull on a flame sweater, take a twirl as a home team player on Saddledome ice. But if you're Brad living in the Flames and you want to maintain your push towards the top, maintain your relevance in the league, especially after an offseason where let's be blunt, they lost their two best players, their two best offensive players at the very least. But you have Huberdeau now, and you have a few years left on some of the key deals. So it's not it's not an insignificant deal by any stretch. In terms of holy cow, how did Brad Treliving pull this off? I mean, first of all, he's willing to give him $10.5 million until 2031. And so I think the length of this definitely got the AAV to where it was. Our friends at Evolving Hockey, they do contract projections. They projected the market value of Huberdeau's deal if he was signing an 8-year extension with the team who had him at $11.9 million. Don LaSession over at The Athletic had the value of Huberdeau on an AAV over 8 years at $9 million. So they basically split the difference, which feels about right. It's versus his projected value to the team in terms of wins and goals above replacement, those kind of things. He's arguably a little bit overpaid on the aggregate relative to market forces and what players of his ilk have tended to get. He's arguably underpaid, and they sort of balance out. One of the things that Flames did of this deal, per Frank Cervelli and Larry Friedman and the usual suspect of insiders, is they went full bore with both bonuses and no trade clauses. It's a full no move clause through all 8 years of the contract. And in the last 2 years, year 7 and 8, Huberdeau has a 12-team trade list he can submit. It's not dissimilar to what Milan Lucic currently has, where he has a no move, but he also has embedded in the no move a trade list sort of built into it. So you have the ability to, if you say, yeah, I'll waive my no move in order to make something happen, you also maintain a bit of control over where you go. So the blended no move no trade used to be sort of in the old CBA used to be able to just eliminate clauses that you didn't like. Example, if it was a clause, if you were acquiring a player who waived his clause, you could decide as the acquiring team if you wanted to keep it or not. And if it was a clause that hadn't kicked in yet, you could just eliminate the clause if you didn't like it. So they got rid of that in the new CBA. So it's regardless of what happens to Huberdeau, if he somehow gets traded somewhere, his clauses aren't going anywhere. The other thing the Flames went, full crazy on was bonuses. He got, I believe the number is, I wrote it down somewhere. It has been a long evening of waiting for this contract announcement. But yeah, he got $61.5 million in signing bonuses on an $84 million contract. Signing bonuses are not subject to escrow, and they're taxed differently than than regular salary. So it's advantageous. It's basically giving the player guaranteed revenue. So it's one of those things where if you're a cash rich team, you throw a lot of bonuses at players. Historically, Brad Treliving has not really done it. Before this deal, the most bonuses he put into a deal was to Matthew Tkachuk in 2019 when he got $7.5 million. Other guys, Johnny Gaudreau got 6.5. Giordano got $4 million. Backlund got $4 million. Hannafin got $3 million. Jacob Markstrom got $5 million in his most recent deal. So Brad Treliving doesn't tend to go, full bore on bonuses or clauses. He tends to do a little of both, but never really too much of both. And this one, because it's a 115-point player who will, be slotting in on the first line for the Flames and be, basically the guy or one of the guys in this team. He's getting paid like a star. And is it risky? Yeah, he's getting paid till he's 38 years old. He's 29 now. He just turned 29 in June. This is essentially tacking 8 years onto a 1-year deal that he had remaining from Florida. So he'll be under Flames contract till he's 38, and he'll be getting paid rather handsomely till he's 38. Part of the things that sort of mitigate the risk a bit are, the cap is expected to go up. It's going to most likely go up $1 million for the 23-24 season. And then depending on when the player's escrow debt is paid off, the escrow debt refers to, remember when the NHL ended their season, 12 games early, the Flames had 12 games left. Players got paid their regular paychecks for the pandemic shortened season. And so, they essentially had 20% of the season disappear, but they got their full paychecks. And so it created essentially, a slightly over $1 billion debt that basically the players had been overpaid by about $1 billion compared to what their share of NHL revenue should have been. And so they've been paying that off with escrow payments over the last few seasons. Depending on whose math you pay attention to, the expectation is the escrow debt could be paid off as soon as the beginning of the 24-25 season. So maybe 2 more seasons of everybody living lean, and then potentially the cap could jump up fairly significantly. We've been hearing a lot about the U.S. cable deals. Turner Sports and ESPN, Disney have been broadcasting the NHL and doing it very successfully last season. Ratings are way up, and shockingly, the NHL, got a ton more money for their U.S. TV deal than they had under their previous deal, and it has not hit the cap yet because of the escrow debt. The cap is basically flat and climbing $1 million a year. Until the escrow debt's paid off. And that if it gets paid off before the 24-25 season, then the cap could jump up very significantly. I've seen projections of something like 10 or 11 million. I haven't looked at the math recently, so I'm just going to say that with a grain of salt. But if you're the Flames and you're paying 10.5 million to Jonathan Huberdeau, it might be tight cap wise, in 23-24, because you can't give that kind of money to some guy, who, regardless of how good he is, without having to make tough decisions elsewhere. And I don't think they're going to be immune to tough decisions. But, I think your nervousness about a $10.5 million cap hit get mitigated fairly quickly if you realize the cap's going to jump up by about, the cap could be realistically, the cap could be like 90 something million dollars in 2 years. So, 83, let's do the math, 82.5 in 22-23, 83.5 in 23-24, and potentially something like 92 or 93 or 94 million dollars the following season. Makes it a little bit easier to swallow, and it would drastically lower the percentage of the cap space the Flames have that Huberdeau would be taking up. So, it's not without risk, but it's also a deal that you make if you're the Flames, if you believe in the player. And I don't think get Jonathan Huberdeau included in this deal if you don't believe in the player. And Brad Treliving on Monday had dinner with Huberdeau. It must have gone well, because now we're talking about a $84 million contract extension. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Flames do next. I assume that the next thing on their to-do list is, Mackenzie Weegar, because he's the next guy up in terms of significant potential UFAs. If you look on the site, we posted a list of potential UFAs and RFAs. The RFA list for the offseason of 2023 isn't too bad. And the UFA list, I mean, Monahan coming off the books, or at least his current contract. Milan Lucic coming off the books, at least his current contract. I'm not convinced that one or both those guys might not be back, but potentially at a much lower cap hit. So you have the ability to throw some money at Mackenzie Weegar and at Jonathan Huberdeau without really handcuffing yourselves too much in the interim. So it's going to be interesting to see how Brad Treliving navigates that. I imagine also the Flames, would love to get Adam Ruzicka's deal done, and then maybe hockey ops can finally get some vacations in. But it's a weird year, because they're jumping. Right now we're just polishing off the medal round. The semifinal and the final of the Hlinka Gretzky Cup is going up in Red Deer. That's basically the first scouting event of the 2023 draft season. Then week after that, like on the 9th, World Juniors start. Matt Coronado's there. It's going to be Matt Coronado's last crack at the World Juniors, because he's turning 20 this year, so he won't be eligible for the December World Juniors. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. I would imagine they're going to have some very excited talks with Coronado in the spring about potentially becoming a Calgary Flame and going pro. It probably depends on what he does in Harvard, but that's something to have in the back of your mind. But I'm sure, with all the things the Flames are juggling, they know they have a lot of defensemen, and they probably see the top six and go, maybe they can, they look at their forward group and go, maybe you can add a forward, and they have some cap space. Maybe they can add a forward. Do they have enough cap space to do that? They could, but they're gonna have to live lean somewhere else. So I mean, I don't think their tinkering's done. Brad Treliving's a guy who loves to tinker, but no, you gotta admit, it's it looked like things were gonna be nervous in Flamestown, in terms of you're losing two of the top 10 players in the National Hockey League last year, but you get one back in Jonathan Huberdeau, and they got a pretty damn good defenseman too, and their defensive group is going to be, on paper at least, very excellent next year. So we'll see if they do. But yeah, it's a very interesting day, very interesting week in terms of the Calgary Flames. So we'll cap it off there before I get tired and rambly. But yeah, Jonathan Huberdeau will be a Calgary Flame, or at least under a Flames contract through 2031, which is apparently a real year. That'll do it for this one. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, follow us everywhere. Again, brought to you by the fine folks at DoorDash. When you're hungry, get DoorDash. And Eau Claire Distillery, Rupert's Whiskey, the official whiskey of the Calgary Flames. And if you're a Flames fan, maybe you're toasting this signing. It's an exciting day, an interesting day, and the ramifications of the signing will be felt for years to come, because one way or another, whether you like it or not, they're putting their saddle and strapping on Jonathan Huberdeau, and this team's going to go where Jonathan Huberdeau leads them for the foreseeable future. So, let's hopefully Treliving's made a good bet. See you guys next time. Take care.